Talk real quick about Jason Stanley's first chapter in How Fascism Works, about Mythic history, and how it applies in the context that we're facing now every single day. Now, fascism, as Stanley so nicely lays out, thrives on mythic history, a golden age that never really existed, one used to justify oppression in whatever present they happen to be in. But here's the thing about the American right. They don't actually have to invent one. 1776 already did it for them, and every historian since then has been helping them. Most far-right movements have to dig through centuries of empire building to find a national myth. Mussolini, he had to resurrect Rome. Hitler had to fabricate the Aryan supremacy. Franco had to drape himself in Catholic medievalism. But American authoritarians, they don't have to create a mythic past, they just have to quote it. They can point to the actual founders, the men who built a government for property-owning white men, who designed a system to contain democracy rather than expand it, who argued in explicit terms that black and indigenous people had no place in their free republic, and say, see, that was always the plan. And the worst part? They're not wrong. The danger isn't that the founders were misrepresented. It's that they were who the right says they were. When Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin just the other day invoked Thomas Jefferson as an opponent of DEI because he believed in meritocracy at the University of Virginia, my alma mater.
DEI is done at the University of Virginia. And today, a group of very, very brave and well-minded trustees voted unanimously to dissolve the office of DEI at the University of Virginia. This is a huge step to restoring the values of Mr. Jefferson, who founded the university, who understood that we are all created equal. And that's exactly what this is about, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity.
He was telling the truth. Jefferson's so-called natural aristocracy, which is built into his education plans, was built on a very specific kind of merit, one that existed only for white people, and explicitly excluded, because they couldn't be a part of that society, they weren't ready yet, black and savage indigenous people from American society. And that's the real danger of a mythic past in fascism. It's not just about making up history. It's about selectively remembering the parts that justify your power, which is at the core of what the DoD is now doing in its erasure project. Fascists don't just say things were better back then. They say things were better because the right people were in charge, and we need to put them back in power. That's why the modern right doesn't erase the racial exclusion of the founders. They celebrate it. They use it as proof that democracy was never meant to be universal, that white male rule was always the natural order of things, and that anything beyond that, civil rights, immigration, gender equality, is a corruption of the original design. That first constitution, that first republic was perfect, and everything after really 1865 was a compromise. And the worst mistake people on the left make is playing defense, trying to cram their own ideals into the framework of men who would have despised them, who'd hate the country that we became. So the founders created this authoritarian system, but resistance, they created American democracy. And so, here's where the far right twists the past to serve their interests. Yes, the founders built a restrictive system, but they didn't get the last word. The first major act of resistance against the Constitution itself was the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights wasn't a gift from the founders, wasn't a gift from James Madison. It was a demand by opponents to that Constitution. So the Constitution, as written, as it came out of that miracle in Philadelphia Convention, created a strong federal government with the power to protect property, suppressed uprisings, and maintain social order. It had no guarantees of individual rights, no protections for speech, assembly, or religion. Hamilton and Madison opposed it explicitly. The founders designed a government for themselves and didn't need a Bill of Rights because they trusted themselves to wield that power responsibly. But there were plenty of people who didn't buy it. They saw the danger in centralized power, especially one controlled by the same elites who had always run the show. The people in charge in 1775 were the people in charge in 1783. Critics like Mercy Otis warned that without explicit limits, the new system would be dangerously adapted to the purposes of an immediate aristocratic tyranny. So the Bill of Rights was forced into existence by people who saw through the founders' self-serving vision and refused to accept it. And every major fight for justice in American history, from abolition to civil rights to labor movements, has used the Bill of Rights as a weapon against the system the founders designed. That's what the far right doesn't want the people to understand, and that's why they hate the Bill of Rights, except for that pesky Second Amendment. That the true American tradition isn't just governance, it's resistance. Because fascism then uses history to control the future. That's the real danger of a mythic past and how fascism works. It justifies power and legitimizes claims to more. Fascism depends on a version of history that says, your suffering isn't the system's fault, it's the fault of the outsiders who ruined it. Your rights weren't taken away, too many people were given rights they never deserved. Your country was great before women, before immigrants, before black people had a say, before queer people existed, suddenly popping out of a hat. And if you believe that history, you will submit to whatever power claims to restore it. And that's why the right clings to the founders so desperately. That's why they rushed to Mount Vernon and Colonial Williamsburg, because the actual history of American democracy, the one built by enslaved people demanding their freedom, indigenous nations resisting land theft, women organizing for the vote, workers fighting for dignity, queer communities refusing to be erased, is a direct threat to their ideology. They don't need a past. They need that past. The past that justifies oppression as natural, power as righteous, and resistance as treason. American fascists invoke the past to trap us in it. And resistance, then, is about refusing to let them.